So let's get started. So thank you so much again for doing this. I mean, we're very appreciative of your time, and we really, like I mentioned to you before we connected to Instagram Live, we believe that it is caregiver mental health is not talked about very often, and it is a big problem, and it affects a lot of people, especially young people. And so we want to just make sure that we are doing our best to raise awareness to this issue. And so thank you again for participating tonight.
Of
And
course.
I guess I'll introduce myself for those who don't know me and are looking at us. My name is Yesenia Barrios. I am an intern at Urban Health Media Project, and Urban Health Media Project is an organization that trains young journalists to report on different health issues, including mental health. And so Therapy Thursday is something we do every month for the last Thursday of the month. Sometimes it's Thursday before, like today, and we talk about different health, mental health problems. And so this time we're talking about caregiver mental health. And so I'm going to start by introducing our guest. And so to my right is Rachel. No, sorry. Abby. And Abby is a young adult. I think she just, I'm not sure. Can you
21.
21, 21 years old, and she cared for her great uncle who had substance abuse and also suffered of mental health problems, illnesses. And so a lot of her responsibilities included, just kind of driving him to places and making sure that he was okay and safe. And so that was kind of what her caregiving consisted of. And I think she mentioned, and she can share a little bit later about this, but she also mentioned she cared for her mother, or is caring for her mother. Not sure exactly what the situation is, but that's pretty much Abby. And thank you, Abby, for joining us again. And then right under me is Rachel Viselman. Am I saying your last name correctly? I hope so. And she is the behavioral health care manager for the Caregiving Youth project. And she works directly with youth and provides counseling. And so she deals with them directly and kind of helps them deal with any mental health problems they might be dealing with and other amazing stuff. So thank you, Rachel. And then to my bottom right is Gordon Amoy, and she is originally from New York, and she moved to Miami and is now the director of Caregiving Youth at the American Association of Caregiving Youth. Okay.
Yes, it's a
I'm
mouthful.
like,
Yes,
that
you got
sounded
it. You got
very,
it, Yesenia.
yeah. Okay, well, I'm glad I got it right. Thank you, Amoy. And so I guess we're going to get started with the first question, and I'll jump right in. So, in addition to navigating life, young caregivers are also responsible for a parent or sibling or family member. What is a good way to balance these responsibilities? And I guess I'll direct the question to you, Amoy, and then I'll move on to our other guest.
Well, I would say that, it's definitely important to have a support system. A strong support system is very important, whether it be, friends that you can talk to about what's going on, or, other family members. Um, as well as, being a part of other support groups, to know that, you're not alone in what you're going through, because that's something that's very important. Especially, I work primarily with youth, younger caregivers, and that's something that's been so very helpful with them to find a balance, and just developing healthy coping skills as well.
Yeah, definitely. I would say I agree. I mean, even just for, anyone who's having a difficulty in life in general, finding a support system that can help them get through difficult times. Thank you for that, Amoy. What would you say, Rachel?
I think that time management is really important, and it plays a big
Hmm.
impact. A lot of the students that we work with are still young. They're still trying to figure it out. And they don't know how to their time. So coming up with different systems that are helpful for them. And just like Amoy said, having that support system is really important because you can rely on other people, making sure that you have time to take a break and just take a moment to yourself. All of that is really important for a child.
Definitely. I agree. I, you know, you deal with a lot of young people, Rachel. Have you seen a lot of them kind of having the additional burden of having to support their loved one financially? And how common how common is that in your
Yeah,
experience?
I would say that at least for high schoolers, it's very common. A lot of them are trying to figure out what's next for them, and it's really difficult in terms of finances and having the money to afford things. So a lot of them work. We found a lot of middle schoolers are doing side jobs like babysitting or like mowing the lawn, things like that, to try to make a little extra money. And they do end up with a big burden financially, and it's not easy. And that's part of the reason that we're trying to raise awareness, is for more people and more organizations to know that this exists and to provide the funding and the resources that are necessary. A lot of these kids, they don't have access to as many resources as people who have a lot of money, because a lot of resources are very costly. So in these events, these kids are stepping up to the plate because that's how they can contribute to the finances, is to get them from the burden of extra support that costs money.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate. I mean, I mean, it's hard me myself as an adult with a job to support myself. So I can't even imagine, how difficult it is to be that young, starting to navigate life and then have that additional worried. Um, thank you for that, Rachel. What about you, Abby, in your experience? How were you able to, balance those things, like caring for the love for your great uncle and then just navigating life at such a young age?
So I had a very good childhood. And then by the time I turned like 8 or 9, I don't know what happened. Everything just started to kind of fall apart. My father he had bipolar disorder my whole life, and I wasn't aware of it until I got older. And if I wasn't with my grandmother's brother, Sammy, I was with my father. And if I wasn't with my father, I was with my mother, and, so on and so on. So no one was ever alone. And I think that also really helped me, because it didn't matter. It wasn't really just, constantly needing to watch them. It was, I can do my homework while you watch TV, and I know that you have a glass of water and you can't fall out of that chair.
Yeah.
So it's almost like being a parent with a newborn, going, okay, where can I leave you while I have to go do something for myself? So
Yeah.
I have to say that the groups, I've been in the program, or I can't believe I've aged out of the program. I was in 6th grade when it first started, and they would have a group, I think once a month, and they would just, how are you doing? Do you need any help? Do you need a tutor? I got so much math help just because I was part of this program, and I couldn't understand basic decimals and all that. So it was just nice that someone noticed that, hi, I don't know what I'm doing, but I need help. And I didn't know I needed help. So
Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah.
a lot of it really stemmed from starting with the American Association of Caregiving Youth, because I didn't know any of this wasn't normal, if that makes
Yeah. Of
sense.
course. So would you say that programs like these were essential in your mental well-being?
I
Can it
think
help you get through that?
I think definitely, because I was also lucky enough to be in band and stuff like that growing up. So I did have some time crunches and stuff like that. But I think that, I was able to just have other kids my age dealing with the same things. They both
Yeah.
are cramming for the same test that I am, and are just, at work, and, just life was happening, and you just have to kind of not slow down.
Yeah, so it kind of,
keep going.
that having band and, going to school kind of have you have both things, at home you have to take care of somebody, um, go to school and hang out with friends. So I guess I'm not sure if that was helpful for you, but it sounds like it was.
Yeah, it was just nice. It was
Thank you so
just a
much for
good
sharing.
knowing that there are people and just you can rely on someone for help.
That is amazing. Yeah. Thank you all for your answers and for your input. I'm gonna move on to the next question, which can you share, and I guess this is more directed towards you, to you, Abby, but I'm sure Amoy and Rachel can have some input, based on their professional experience. Can you share a little bit about how difficult it is to take care of your own mental health while being a caregiver? I mean, we talked a little bit about that, but I'm sure it wasn't. It's not just that complex. So if you can
Yeah,
share a little more.
of course. So if an older family member has some kind of mental illness, usually it runs in the family. So, of course, my brother and I were both taken to make sure, and of course, he got lucky, and I have all the fun stuff. So, I got to almost commiserate, but like in a funny way, with my dad. I might not have bipolar, but I understand, we could joke about anything because I don't know if anyone else copes that way, but sometimes, humor that might not necessarily be clean is funny, so like jokes about his medication or you need to make sure you take the, just stuff like that. You got to remember that it's not just the child that's having to deal with it as well. Whoever the other person is knowing that they have to be some kind of burden or feel that they have to rely on someone else. It just,
Yeah. I mean, you
yeah.
sound very empathetic, so that's very kind of you. I mean, it sounds like you really try to look at the situation in a very positive light, and I'm very glad for you. But when there were moments that you just like it was too much for you, and you felt like like you tried to be positive, and even people that aren't caregivers, kind of I feel like go through this. Um, how did you cope, when you just you no matter how much you try to look at it in a positive light, it just was a
You
little
let
much.
yourself feel the emotions. Don't try to bottle them up. I would go to my mom at 3 o'clock in the morning and because that's the time when you think about everything. And she would sit there and talk to me and say, you know what? You're right to have all of these emotions. Your feelings are valid. And just because you're doing something else doesn't equate you to not being allowed to share these or feel this way because you are dealing with something that kids normally your age don't have to deal with. I didn't think about that, having to help family members go to the bathroom, walk, get them stuff was not something that someone else didn't do. So it's just making sure that you take care of yourself by allowing yourself to feel whatever emotion it is that you need to feel. Because
Yeah.
bottling it up is just going to end up throwing, just some negative on everything else that you do. And then that just, it just steamrolls it.
Yeah,
Because I did that. That's
really
why I
good
noticed.
advice for everyone. Let yourself feel what you have to feel. Yeah, thank you for that, Rachel. I mean, you seem like a very positive person. um Rachel, what would you advise, just young caregivers and caregivers in general, to kind of take care of their own mental health, while taking care of someone else?
Yeah, so I with what Abby is saying, it's really important not to bottle up and just like let it happen because otherwise it explodes. And I talk to kids about this all the time, and what I find is that a lot of them don't realize that they're necessarily struggling with their mental health. And a lot of times they think they're totally fine, and then they sit with me and we start talking and they're like, "Oh, she's right. Like I'm not feeling necessarily normal things." And then we start to talk about it, and like it's very overwhelming to have all this responsibility. So to take like 5 or 10 minutes a day to just focus on yourself, I think is important for everyone, but especially for people who are taking care of someone else all the time. They can write in a gratitude journal. You can just take a few moments to take deep breaths, take a little bit of a longer shower, listen to your favorite song, like do something that's focused on you. And even if it's just 5 minutes before bed, it can go a long way.
Yeah, yeah. I thank you for that. Those are I'll even take those those that advice. What about you, Amoy? What would you recommend?
Well, I mean, and well, just to add on too of what Rachel just mentioned, I think to a lot of times, sometimes our youth, they recognize or they might know they have an issue, but they're afraid or too embarrassed sometimes to speak about mental health issues. And that's something that, we try to encourage or youth or young people. It's okay. It's okay to recognize that, you have these emotions or maybe these not so good or negative feelings to talk about it and process it and get the help, because it is challenging. It can be very challenging for the caregivers to even find that time to really, focus on themselves or, because of the extensive caregiving responsibilities that they may have sometimes. So I would say it's just very, very important to try to find the time, just try to find a time to take care of yourself and, you know, focus on, just those healthy coping skills to get you through.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, Thank you for your advice and your sharing your experience, Abby. I will move on to the next question. And I'll direct it to you, Amoy, and then we can ask our other guests. Why are caregivers more vulnerable to develop depression and anxiety among other mental illnesses than the general public?
Oh, well, I'll say it's probably due to the stressors of, the caregiving responsibilities that they have. It's also very time consuming. They lose, it's time consuming. So they don't have as much time for themselves to do things that they like or to engage in things that they like. A lot of our youth, they lose out on sleep and they lose out on social time. They don't really get that time to be out or to be a kid or to be a young adult because they have to spend a lot of time at home caregiving. Even for like a lot of our high school students, they aren't able to participate in like after curricular activities and groups because they have to go home to help out maybe mom or a grandparent or a sibling that's depending or relying on their care. So oftentimes because of those things, it definitely leads to negative emotions or feelings of sadness. So depression tends to kick in. And then with anxiety, you have a lot of our youth too who are caring for someone, and oftentimes they're so worried about that person. They're at school or wherever at work, if it's if they're working, thinking about that loved one at home. Are they okay?
Yeah,
So
definitely. I mean, I don't know if I've shared this before, but I'm a full-time in New York City, and then sometimes I babysit, and I mean I do this for a living, but it's also like I'm taking care of someone, and it can be very stressful, and so I can't even imagine. I mean, it's not like it matters because at the end of the day, you're taking care of a loved one, but I can't even imagine going through all of that and then not even having like financial support to kind of sustain yourself, because most of the time I assume a lot of your time is spent taking care of your loved one, and so even if you wanted to go out and work and make some sort of living, it's just kind of very hard to do that. And so when I think about it, it's just like, wow, I mean it must be very difficult and mentally. I myself have babysit children with disabilities, and I mean I go for a few hours and I walk out of there like really stressed. So I
right,
can't
right, right.
imagine like doing this every day for multiple hours a day.
And these,
Yeah.
if I could add, I mean, these things, these responsibilities that these students have, like, these are things that a home health aide worker or a professional is getting paid to do, and it will be great. One of the things that we're focusing on or hoping to accomplish is that, these youth can be compensated for that. Right now, fortunately, our agency have been able to have an agreement with, our school district in Palm Beach County to give students community service hours, because a lot of these students are, they have to go home after school to help out, or sometimes they're missing school to help out at home. So it's great that we were able to, prorate those hours and, give them community service hours so that they can graduate.
Yeah.
And also, hopefully maybe, tuition reimbursement can be given, because a lot of these students end up, pursuing college or trade school or doing things after high school. So it'll be great to even compensate them in those ways too.
Yeah, I mean, it really is so unfortunate that we
Mm-hmm.
think it's like it's amazing that schools are considering this as community service, but it should be more should be done, right? Like you should. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, in New York City, and I guess this is one of the questions, and I'll just jump right into it. In New York City, or New York State. I know that they're allowing family to take care of their family members and be compensated. Um, and so I don't think that this is happening in many states, but it's also like it can make for people, because you can feel good about your family being well taken care of while also paying the bills. So I mean, it's just very unfortunate that you even had to fight for that, for schools to recognize this as community service. But thank you, and I'll ask you, Rachel. Why are caregivers more vulnerable to develop depression and anxiety than the general public?
Yeah, I think Amoy really pinpointed everything. I think that one of the major things that come up is that kids are in school all day. We're talking 11 and 12-year-olds in sixth grade. So you think about think about how hard it is for us as adults, and then think back to when you're 11 or 12 to have that added pressure. You don't always necessarily realize that's even pressure. And you're focused on other people all day long, all night long. There's so many things you can't control. And that's really hard for someone to understand and also to just grapple with on the day to day. We see kids at school kids who don't have to deal with caregiving, and they're shaking their leg all day long because they're anxious, because they have a lot of work to do. And then our students, on top of that, are thinking, what's mom doing right now? Is mom safe right now? Is mom back in the hospital? Do I need to call mom, but I can't have my phone out? And it's kind of like, I'm sure that all of you have had a moment like this before. But do you ever, like, you leave the house and you're like, did I shut the oven off, or did I shut my flat iron off? And it's like having that in the back of your mind all day, but it's a loved one that you're thinking about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know, but I can imagine it's very, very hard. Um, Abby, did you ever experience depression, anxiety while you were caring for your great uncle or mom?
Yeah, even, I mean, in fifth grade, I was diagnosed with adolescent depression. Unfortunately, mental illness runs in my family. So, you know, it happens. It's just something you deal with. But yeah, it makes it a little harder when you're trying to tell someone that it's going to be okay, when you have a voice inside your head saying, why are you trying to comfort them? You don't know it, and then it just increases the anxiety. So I honestly think it makes it easier when you have a connection with whoever you're taking care of, that they know that they also can talk to you about whatever they're going on. Like, as long as there's like an open line of communication, that with anybody can change how someone's life goes just because of what goes on in their head. Because talking to yourself about it doesn't help.
Yeah, yeah. Do you find that that your depression has, I mean, that you've kind of found ways to, make it better for yourself in terms of that? Or is it
I mean,
something that
like
you
things
try
like
to go?
exercise. I mean, that is how I've learned to cope. I've, accepted that I'm never going to be able to get off of the medication. The way that my mom explained it to me when I was little, she said, there are trucks in your head. Yeah, there are trucks. And they deliver all of the ingredients to make sure that your body runs correctly. One of them doesn't fill up all the way, and that's why you need to take the medication. And I used to think that that was the smartest explanation because I still think of it that way. My body doesn't make enough of whatever it is, so I'm not broken. I just need help.
That's a really good way of looking at it. Thank you for sharing
It's all
that.
about the trucks.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And so that leads us to our next question. And you kind of touched on this. So you said when you need to unplug and recharge, you work out, do exercise. What is
Definitely
another
try
way
to.
of kind of recharging and unplugging from the world that you do?
An interesting way is sometimes going to work, getting out of your house, dealing with people, and just, you know, you leave whatever it is at home. If you had a fight in the morning or something, or you woke up in a bad mood, you can't bring any of that with you into the outside world because that's not how you want to portray yourself or how you want to know that other people look at you. And it took me a really long time to think that, while people do care what happens outside, what you look like, whatever, everyone's just really just trying to either be polite or worry about themselves. So you lock yourself in your room, read a book, go to sleep. Sleep is one of the best coping mechanisms because you don't think about anything. It's also a good sign of depression, but sleeping it's a real good help of how to like get away from everything. No one can bother me because I'm asleep.
Yeah, and I guess also, it's pivotal to just make sure your body's resting and so that you can take care of yourself, because I don't think many people realize how detrimental it could be to not sleep what you're supposed to sleep. But
If you're
yeah,
taking care of someone during the day and doing your homework, and then by the time you're done, it's midnight, do you have any time left for yourself? Because then you stay up until 2 a.m. because you want to watch your show or play your game. And then you have to be somewhere at 8 o'clock in the morning and your whole sleeping schedule is messed up. But
yeah,
it's not your fault. Like that's where it comes into play. And the teachers get mad and they say, well, why are you sleeping? And they don't know. So if teachers were just a little more understanding about that, I know that's not, but that's just everyone just kind of be a little more considerate.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you. And Amoy, what do you recommend people? I mean, I'm sure that this is kind of more like what works for each person. But in general, what do you recommend people do to unplug and recharge?
Right. So definitely, as you said, Yesenia, everyone's going to have their own individual thing or that works for them, as Abby's saying, sleeping for her or talking to someone. For others, for me, I would say the advice is it's always good to have someone you can talk to, have a support system. I always go back to that. And a lot of times when we talk about support system, people tend to think of having like a lot of friends or family and people around. It could just be one or two reliable persons that, no matter what, you can talk to and they could talk you through something, as well as finding something that you really like, that's unique to you, something that you really enjoy. I know for me and I like outdoors, being outside, taking a fresh air, going to walk. There's a lot of free, easy things that that can be done to help with that.
Yeah, I love the outdoors as well. So that helps me recharge. But I agree, everyone's different. And so some people like journaling, some people like, just talking to other people. So thank you for that advice. What would you recommend, Rachel?
Well, everything that was said, but I would
Sorry, we
also
took your
add,
points.
no, that's okay. Meditating is really helpful. An activity where they don't have to think. So whether that's sitting and focusing on your breathing, listening to a guided meditation, some people like painting or drawing and they find that
Mhm.
creative. Just doing something that kind of lets you escape is something that I recommend.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend first find what helps you, and then do as much as you can of it. Okay, and then leads us to our next question, which we talked about, and so I don't think that it's necessary to touch on it again. But if you have anything to add, which is how important is it to have a good support system? So if you want to add anything, just jump right in, and if not, we can move on to the next.
Well,
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I'll add something. I mean, I think it's just really important to have a support system, not to keep repeating the same point, but, working with youth and seeing how impactful it is. So for those of you who may not know, in the schools, in our middle and high schools, we have what's called, we have a group for our youth caregivers. And, we meet once a month. As well as, and it's this just a time where these students get to have a space, a safe space to just kind of speak about, the issues or the challenges freely, that they're experiencing, as well as, to process it and know that they're not alone. Because a lot of times, not that we want to be happy that somebody else is in a bad predicament, but sometimes it gives you that comfort to know that, okay, I'm going through the situation, but it's not just me. There's other people, they're going through it. They're my age, they're going through it. They seem to be making it by, let me connect with them and, have like a support amongst folks or youth that are going through similar things, So
Yeah.
And
I think it's
to add on to that, actually, when I was
Mhm.
sitting in those groups, I didn't even know who those people were because we would all get called from different, it was just whoever was available that period to come and take that minute and,
Mhm.
half hour talk to everybody. Just seeing the similar faces every month. And then when I went to a different school and followed, so did the same people. So it wasn't even
Mhm.
just, it was just knowing that there was someone who has gone through a lot of the similar struggles that I have the same time. And just
Yeah.
we've all
Mhm.
survived together, It's just
Kind of
having
this one thing to
just
connect
knowing.
about. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Um,
humans are social beings. It's just kind of the way that it is.
Mm-hmm.
So to know that you're not alone, either physically not alone because there are other people near you, emotionally not alone, to know that there are people that are going through the same thing as you, whether you ever talk to them or not, is always reassuring. And just to have, like Amoy said earlier, one or two people that are in your corner that you can rely on, or who just make you feel seen. That's all that you can
Mhm.
really ask for. So I think it's essential.
oh yeah, for sure. Um, Amoy and Rachel, I guess one of you can answer this. How many schools are you working with right now?
So I guess I'll answer it,
Sure.
Rachel. So right now our program is in 35 middle and high schools in Palm Beach County. So we are slowly we're expanding and growing, and so yep, we're in 35 middle and high schools currently.
Well, I'm sure you're making a big difference in many, many people's lives, and so hopefully
I am
that
one of them.
more programs are like this. Um, and thank you for all that you do. I'm sure again it means a lot to these people. Um, and then I mean, I guess again we can skip that question because it's have you been able to find a support group? And I mean, you are a support group, so
Mhm.
so I'll move on to to the last question, which is what can be done on a political level to make it easier for caregivers? Like I mentioned, in New York State, they've implemented where, a family member could be paid to take care of another family member. And so, what would you say would be make a big difference? And we can begin with you, Rachel.
Think that there are a lot of cases where people think that a child taking care of a parent is a form of neglect. And we've heard it before in our organization. People have asked us what. And I think it's just important for people to be aware of the situation, of how common it is and how few people know about it, and to have people in political offices who are advocating for these families and these kids. Like, as you can see with Abby, she loves her family. And like, if someone were to come up to her and try to take her from her family, that'd be very heartbreaking for a child who doesn't really need to be, So for the people who are in states where they don't know anything about this and situations like this are happening, we need the acknowledgement and the understanding of the government to know what this situation is and what it means to a child and their family.
Yeah, I agree for sure. I mean, it's just better to kind of work with these young people than to make it harder for them, because it's not going to help them any better by separating them. What would you say needs to be done, Amoy? Um,
Well, just to piggyback on some of the points that Rachel made, but first of all, for sure, acknowledgement that, this exists. A lot of times, too, I think when people think about caregivers, we think about the adults. And even so, I know there's programs through Medicaid and whatnot that provide, compensation for the adult caregivers. But, our focus, too, is on the youth caregivers. What about them? So there needs to be acknowledgement, recognition, as well as more funding for us, because even so, in Florida, I believe adult caregivers get paid. I don't want to you can't quote me on the exact amount, but the last time I checked, I think it's estimated between $9 to $13. And when you really think about that, I mean, who can really survive off of that type of income coming in, weekly, monthly, whatever it is. So there needs to be more funding where they're compensated better, more recognition for youth caregivers as well, more funding for support resources, because I don't really know much about New York, but in Florida, the American Association of Caregiving Youth is the only organization that recognizes caregiving youth and that provides a comprehensive, services to them. And I just feel like there's a lot that needs to be done. And first, it just needs to start with awareness, because if you don't know something, you're just not going to do anything about it.
yeah, definitely.
So,
Um, how would you recommend just regular person who just kind of, I guess, doesn't have as much of a big outlet to help out with this kind of issue, and raising awareness again so that it can be recognized on a national level. What are you?
um, well, well, people can be involved in many ways in our agency. We have a caregiving youth council that we have just volunteers, and with the guidance of a staff member, just volunteers, a task force that's specifically geared towards raising awareness. So once someone gets introduced to us, we definitely have that segment or that arena for them to be involved and raise awareness there. So there's different opportunities for people to know about it, once they get introduced to us. But
Mhm.
um
I guess just overall, if do your research, see how you can, what organizations are near you that you can join, volunteer, help out. Um, what about you, Abby? What would you say needs to be done on a national political level or even
I
local?
think I think that there's a huge stigma that no one talks about when you say, "Oh no, I have to go take care of my mom." what's wrong with your mom? You know, like, can your
Mm-hmm.
mom not take care of you? Well, she
Mm-hmm.
came home from work and she, you know, like, you shouldn't have to explain why you weren't able to get your homework done or why you need extra food stamps, like just stuff like that. It's even like the smallest donation, like monetary, I have to say, is really helpful because food is a lot more accessible now, so you don't have to like look for it as much. But any assistance, like transporting someone from your house to the doctor's appointment and your car doesn't have any gas, you know, because you can't afford it because you need to put the electricity on instead. If there was an Uber or something where someone could say, okay, cool, no questions, you got it. Here's a ride to the doctor's appointment. Maybe we can't pick you up, but we can get you there. So just let there be less shame in, because there shouldn't be any. You know, it's just someone became a little less fortunate than you and needs some help. And I
Yeah.
wish people would understand that. Locally around me, you know, when people say, "Oh, you live with your grandmother," yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so people question, why are you 21 living in this retirement home? Because that's what life is. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that the most helpful thing would be just having someone know that it's not scary to ask for help, that there is someone willing to help if you just ask for it. Because no one's going to want to ask for help bathing someone else. But if someone says, hey, do you need some help? Take
Yeah,
it. There's no shame.
of course. Yeah. So, kind of just, educating people, right? Overall,
Correct.
that this needs to be destigmatized, and there's no shame in that at all. And
Yeah, I'm
everybody's
sure one
part
in every
of
five
that.
kids is taking care of somebody and
Yeah.
doesn't even think
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Hmm. Either a
I'm
sibling.
sure that the figure is higher, but
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I absolutely agree. And this is again why we're doing this, because we want to end the stigma, raise awareness, and all the good stuff. So we've actually reached the end of our amazing conversation. I think we've had a very good conversation, full of great information, great advice. If anyone has anything to add, you can definitely jump in. Any resources that you may know of. I think we mentioned a few, but definitely go ahead and look at the Association of Young Caregiving Youth, Caregiving Youth, sorry, their website, and see how you can help out, and just kind of learn a little bit more about how much young people who are caregivers are struggling and how you can help. So Amoy, if you have any additional resources, Rachel, Abby.
Sure. Sure, sure. Well, so our website is aacy.org. That's aacy.org. And actually, on the 21st of next month, we have our annual conference that's coming up. So if you definitely want to learn more about caregiving youth and this population, what you can do to help, how we can make a change legislatively, please, because actually, it's funny that, your last question that you asked was about legislative change, because that's actually the theme is progress towards change in legislation for caregiving youth. So please visit our website. You'll see the different activities and events that we have, and to just stay in tune and connect with us.
Yeah.
And it was great that we had this discussion tonight. It's great. Thank you, Yesenia, for having
Oh no,
us.
thank you for for your time, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and your experiences, and we're very grateful again that you took some of your time, and it was a really good conversation. And Rachel, if you have any other resources, Abby, make sure if you can't think of any right now, make sure you email me, and we'll include it in our story that we're actually going to be writing. I'm actually going to be writing a story about tonight, and so we can include it there as well.
Okay,
Um,
awesome. And for us, anything that you need for the paper, like let us know.
yeah, of course. Yeah, I am definitely going to reach out if there's anything that I need clarity on or anything further.
Well,
All right. Well, thank you so much again. And it was a very good conversation. Thank you for your time again. I know it's late, and we're very grateful that you could probably be eating dinner right now or something. So thank you again. And we're kind of all working towards the same mission.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And have a good night. Keep an eye out again for the story and a short summary video that we're gonna be working on and publishing on our social media. So thank you again.
Awesome.
have a good
Have a good
Thank
night.
you so much
Okay. All right.
for
Bye.
asking about
Thank you.
Thank you.